Okay, great. We're going to bring our next performer right up to the stage, and it is a pleasure to welcome her back. I was first put onto Kristi Lovato's poetry through the Ink Noise Reads and our fellow poet Curtis White Carroll. It is an honor to bring her back for, this would be yes, her second time at the hour that stretches. You're going to love what she does. Please give her a big hand, Kristi Lovato.
I love him because we are both the boy and the girl in this relationship, and it's okay. But I have to get my head in the game because we're on a mission. I try to feel dangerous, and it isn't hard at all. She meets us at the door. Her right eye is puffy and beginning to bruise, and it's not the first time I've ever seen her with a black eye, but it's the first time we don't laugh about how it got there. I think, shit, girl, if you weren't crying, you'd look really fucking tough, and I feel guilty because she is tough. And if she forgot, then it's my job to remind her. Once, late on a summer night, we walked along the riverfront. It was warm and the fog hung back over the ocean. We stumbled upon two skinheads thugging in the back of the Rio Theater. They threw aside their spray paint cans and chased us down like dinner. I could have run, but she was caught. She spit right in his face, jerked free, and we ran away, hands clasped tight, laughing and laughing until morning. The next day, she brandished the ring of bruises around her arm like a new tattoo. I don't know where that girl lives anymore. I hug her and hold her and try to say the right things, but time is short because a van is coming, and they've emailed her a list of things that women always forget when they're running away from their own homes. Things that can be used against you, like pets, your birth certificate, or your mother's address. The boyfriend's inside packing and making the girls giggle through their trimmers. He understands that is man's work, being helpful and kind and silly in the face of this. They need the kind of boy who will pack up your toys so you can flee from your father, deciding which dolls go in which backpack, because Strawberry Shortcake and Barbie don't get along, and if we don't keep them separate, they'll bicker, like sisters should, if they weren't afraid, all the way to the shelter. I'm outside, because this is women's work, and because my hands will not stop shaking. I'm keeping vigil on the porch, but instead of a candle, I'm holding an aluminum baseball bat. I am fearless and furious about what happened to little mama to them, and they need to see that too. He occasionally circles the block very slowly. I lean on the bat like a cane and light each cigarette from the cherry of the last. I know this game. Mr. Finaro gave me an A on my presentation comparing the stage blocking in a streetcar named Desire with chimpanzee dominance behavior, so I know not to look away first. I want him to pull over, but he doesn't. I want him to get out of the car, and I want him to be yelling, and I want to see the look in his eyes when I swing this fucking bat right at his head, and I wonder if that makes us alike. Because he sucked all her power up, and now I want to take it from him, and that is love too. Instead, the phone rings. We both know better than to let her answer the phone, and they both know better than to let me answer the phone, so the boyfriend takes the call. I hate the way that his voice is soft, and I can hear the yelling through the line about love and misunderstandings. The boyfriend only tells him, "You fucked up," before hanging up the phone. I want him to say more, to shred him up with words, to make him hurt. I don't believe in love, because love is stupid, and it's poorly designed. It makes us weak and strong and desperate, and it has hurt everyone everywhere. Love is wild animals looking for shelter in places full of claws and teeth. It's a freight train that barrels down your carefully laid tracks and drags everything in its path for miles and miles. Love is being in the wrong arms at the right time, the right arms at the wrong time, or in no arms, with your arms around the cat, and the cat doesn't want to be there either. It's a verb and an adjective and a blank space between words when there's nothing you can say, and I do believe in it. I do. I just don't think it means what we think it means. I don't believe that love is in and of itself a force for good. But sometimes you get lucky, and I'm lucky. The women come and collect bags, girls and little mama. They are clinical and efficient, and I try not to think of how many times they've done this. He doesn't talk on the way home, which is good, because I don't feel like talking. I'm thinking about all the times I picked the wrong boys. Well, if I wasn't so good at leaving, I could be little mama. Even the boyfriend was a bad decision, but this time I picked the worst possible boy to have a one-night stand with, because he's some strange miracle, and I'm not going anywhere. And maybe that's love, too. When we get home, I put on Return of the Jedi, because it's my favorite. And I want to fall into a world where the princess and her army of teddy bears rip out the heart of the worst bad daddy, and it's the boys who always need rescuing. trumpet of something that will probably be something else, but right now it's a baby. She'd grown up in a crowded house in a crowded city, one of 6 kids in a 3-bedroom house, and she'd been mother to them all, including herself. The only kind of parenting they'd had were the strict edicts passed along from the pastor, guarding against the dangers of dancing and parking and rock and roll. And that left all of the love and the laundry to her, but that was behind her now. It came as no surprise to anyone who knew her that she'd married a man who would take her as far away from all of this as one could get. The year was 1971, and it was her first time out of LA. It was a honeymoon and an escape. She'd let her sisters think they were helping, tying bundles of Jordan almonds and giggling about wedding nights. She'd stitched together her wedding dress by hand, a form-skimming tunic with an overlay of lace daisies. She'd modeled it on a dress she'd seen Twiggy wear in a Contraband magazine. She'd ironed her long brown hair and woven a crown of flowers instead of a veil. Like some flower child of God in the Pentecostal church, her flowing lines in contrast with his Marine Corps dress blues. He was stationed in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which was a whole country away from LA. The two of them, alone in this car and on this stretch of highway, it seemed, in the universe, with the seed of her new family. And she'd never raise another woman's children again. She'd never seen anything so beautiful as this desert. The hills were 1,000 shades of earth, and sometimes they would drive for hours without seeing another human being. During the day, they would stop to stretch their legs, and she would wander the roadside picking wildflowers to decorate the dashboard, but at night they were in another world. Back in LA, the smog blurred the stars to dull smears of light that were hopeless against the city's constant glare. No one ever looked at them. But out in the desert, they were impossibly sharp, like pinpricks in the fabric of the sky. There were millions of them, shining down on a world that was bigger than she'd ever dreamed. Back in the car, the world was shrunk down to the slice of land illuminated by the headlights. She didn't realize she'd seen it until it was already past. It was huge and roughly dog-shaped, but not like any dog she'd ever seen. It could have been a wolf. She'd never seen a wolf. But in the darkness, it had seemed hugely out of scale, and that wasn't all. Just an impression, really, but it left her with a sense of terrible menace, like it wasn't meant to be seen, or it was meant to be seen by her alone. It was darker than the desert and felt older than hell. She'd grown up hearing tales about the devil, but this was something else altogether. The kind of darkness that didn't want anything. It just was. She started in the darkness of the car, and her husband reached out his hand to soothe her. "What is it?" he said. "It's nothing," she said. But it wasn't nothing. And over the years, she thought about that beast over and again as a shadow spread over her marriage, and the man she hoped to build a life with gave into a darkness of his own. 1988. Her first car was a powder blue 1951 DeSoto Fire Dome. Her father bought it from a junkyard on one of their rare weekends in a moment of stumbling grace. They pieced it together on his more lucid days, meticulously sanding the rust off and soaking each part of the engine in AST before fitting it carefully back in place. She would sit behind the wheel and dream of all the places that car would take her. But on her 14th birthday, he sold it to a collector. He used the money to rent a moving van to take him back to Missouri. She'd never even held the keys. On 3 occasions, his sponsor called on him to make amends, and they'd have an awkward phone conversation or two before backsliding to step 1, but that was pretty much the end of it. She fell in love with the first boy who took her for a drive. They met in a secret smoking spot behind the Capitola Mall by the truck-sized trash compactor. He had a Greek poet's name, perfect hair, and a ratty old motorcycle. The first time she got on, she didn't know she had to hold on tight, and when he took off, she fell right off the back, laughing all the way down. She didn't make that mistake again. She wrapped her arms and her thighs around him and held on way longer than she should have. Then, John Fitzpatrick, who was a terrible driver. But centrifugal force can feel a lot like love if you close your eyes and lower your standards. A tight curve will pull you in, but if you can't hold on, it will spit you right off the road on the other side, much like John Fitzpatrick had, which is how she swore off boys entirely for most of her 15th year until she was suckered in by a boy with no car at all. It should come as no surprise then that in 2 weeks' time she would marry the boy who had finally taught her to drive. He was morally opposed to automatic transmissions. On a hill, he put it in first and taught her how to hold the car still without using the brakes, without stalling out, and without rolling backwards. The trick, he said, was to find the sweet spot where the car was putting out just enough energy to cancel out all the force acting against it. Her mother thought that was complete and utter bullshit. Driving is not for sitting still, she said. Driving is like life. You get in the highest gear you can before someone makes you stop. And that's what she was doing here. Now, on this lonely stretch of Highway 1, she'd been up and down this highway 100 times. Weekend day trips to the Monterey Wharf, where she traded nickels for kisses from a cross-eyed monkey in a vest and a fez, while a strange old Ukrainian cranked music out of a box. sneaking into U-Pick farms with her father at dusk to steal strawberries, to the army surplus store out of Fort Ord for her first pair of combat boots. Away from the town, it was impossibly dark. Just the stars and the blinking red lights illuminating the tins of smoke from the Moss Landing power plant. She was caught up in the soothing geometry. Perfect rows of strawberries and artichokes fanned toward her in a way as she passed. She almost missed it. But the silhouette was so out of place in the low farmlands and windbreak plantings of trees, roughly dog-shaped but impossibly huge. She felt it watching her as she passed. What the fuck? She slammed on the brakes and pulled onto the shoulder of the road. With a grin, she threw open the car door, scanning the horizon where she thought she'd seen what? Some X-Files crypto beast like her own personal Loch Ness monster. She was filled with a sense of wonder, like she had a peek into a part of the world that no one had ever seen. Later that night, she talked with her mother over coffee mugs full of leftover champagne from some pre-wedding get-together. She told her about the thing that she had seen. Her mother got the strangest look in her eyes. I never told you, did I? I saw it too, or something like it, right after I married your father. For a minute, the mystery of the thing was gone. Maybe it was some kind of warning, a curse. Maybe in spite of everything, she had circled back to the same bad road her mother had traveled all those years ago. What does it mean? She whispered. Her mother laughed. It doesn't mean anything. This last one's called Postpartum. When I first laid eyes on you, it was so late on a summer's night, it was early on a summer morning. One of those stay up forever in a drug haze, screaming at the top of your lungs, kind of having a baby nights. You were perfect and tiny, and all of your parts were in the right places, and I couldn't let you go. I looked up at your dad and said, tell the nurse to go to hell, they can weigh in later. I was supposed to be tired, but you'd just gotten here, and I wanted to show you everything. I begged the nurse to let me take you down to the courtyard garden. It was technically inside the hospital. They were scandalized by the thought, as if all the babies were their babies and they hadn't yet decided if we got to keep you. The recovery wing is a high security situation. You had a low jack bracelet around your ankle that triggered an alarm at the nurse's desk if someone got you too close to the door. I walked in long, slow laps around the ward and acted surprised when the guards came running. Back in the cage, I tried to sing you lullabies, but all of the lullabies in me seemed to have fled in terror in the face of an actual baby. The first of what was now considered a full night's sleep, I dreamt that we sliced your legs crossways with a butcher knife and you were made entirely of sorely hard candy, and we ate you in pieces and bragged about how sweet you were. That's perfectly normal, said the nurse. Most new moms dream of eating their babies. It's your brain's way of saying, get that baby back inside you where it's safe. Which is horrifying, and probably true. They let us take you home. And as soon as we got there, I wanted to be back in the hospital. The house, which was fine when I left, it was suddenly a chaos-ridden hovel with tumbleweeds of cat hair and dog hair and danger. Your dad put up a wall-to-wall baby gate, a quarantine zone for our open-air bubble baby, and I gave up on lullabies. We made a game of writing you silly, stupid songs, 99 verses of Olivia the Tattooed Baby and Hush Little Kitten and all the single babies. I sang love cats and blue songs I made up about how you would never ever stop crying, and early spiritual hymns from the B-sides of the 90s Bay Area punk group. I named you Tiger Cub, and you slept in a rocking chair with piles of pillows under my feet and my arms, and your tiny fingers wrapped around the hem of my shirt. Your grandmother eventually made me put you down. She sent your dad and me out for a walk. She said I was getting crazy eyes. I made it 2 blocks before I started to miss you. I could feel the distance between us and my tits, and right between my tits where my heart would be if I hadn't left it sitting in a bassinet in the living room 2 whole blocks away. We paced in orbit around the house for 20 minutes. I dreamt that zombies rose up and took over the earth. They all wanted to eat you because you were bite-sized and tender, a cannibal appetizer. Your father lured them away from the house every night in a burrito truck, wearing tacos made from scavenged corpse meat, and they never left the house again. Even now, every time I hear La Cucaracha, I scream inside. I began to worry about things. Here's a list of things I worried about in no particular order. If you were ever going to get bigger, whether you would get too big, that someone would notice how cute you were and try to steal you. If your apparent inability to bond with any particular toy indicated a disinclination toward monogamy, that I was too old to be a mother and would never live to see my grandchildren, that you would have children too young and I would live to see my grandchildren, that you would have children at just the right age and they would all have children, and eventually the sun would burn out and it would have all been for nothing. that I wouldn't have time to have more children, and you would be lonely, that I would have too many children and never do anything with my life besides raise children, that you would stop calling me when you went away to college, you would never speak again, that you would never go to college and would die a poor, lonely lady who would starve food, that everyone grew up to be sad and the world was a terrible place, and what business did we have making more people who would never be happy? I started spending a lot of time at Target. Something about the bright lights and the ever-present Starbucks and the reasonably priced novelty underwear made it all very soothing. And with so many people looking at me, I was sure to remember to smile. A very nice woman who noticed me not smiling in the bathroom explained to me that having children was like giving your heart to the world. Sure. By giving, you mean pulling it out of your chest, flopping it on a skateboard, and rolling it off down the street, yelling, "Hey, you guys, did you take care of that for me?" But I didn't tell her that. And I still didn't ever want to put you down, and by then you wouldn't let me put you down anyway. I attended a workshop held by a baby-wearing militia who trained me to strap you to my chest with yards and yards of fabric. I tried to distract myself with a lot of television, which didn't turn out well. I couldn't watch Buffy anymore because I no longer cared if she was leaving the house without her mother's permission to stop the apocalypse, because she was leaving the house without her mother's permission, and surely that was more serious than the apocalypse. Dexter was like a 1-hour commercial for People Meat. I tried to watch Lost, but it was like being introduced to dozens of people who I didn't intend to become friends with, and I had to listen to them go on and on about themselves, while I looked for a casual way to escape. I dreamt the aliens invaded and kept us alive for food in warehouses on the outskirts of town. You were older, a wealthy little dumpster string. We assembled a rocket ship from an old Airstream trailer and salvaged car parts. We didn't know where we were going, but anywhere was better than here. I began to get very anxious. And anxiety is not fear, per se. It is the thing right before being afraid. When your brain decides something is about to happen, and you're going to need superhuman strength and reflexes to deal with it. So here, have a Costco-sized shot of adrenaline to get you going, except your brain is saying that, like, all the time. And you think that at some point you just run out of adrenaline, but you don't. Like, there's a constant emergency broadcast signal that plays just for you, and you are always frozen in place wondering whether it would be a lightning storm, zombie uprising, flash flood, nuclear accident, alien invasion, magnetic polar shift, Kansas-sized meteorite, earthquake, or industrial accident that spews millions of gallons of lung-burning toxic waste into the air, and nobody ever comes on to tell you that it's only a test. Your grandmother said that anxiety is a form of narcissism, because only really important people are in that much danger. She said I needed to get out of the house and get a reality check, so she bought me a ticket to a fundraiser. Maternity leave had taught me a few things about self-care. Baby wipes are not just for babies. Pajamas aren't just for sleeping. And you can buy spray-on shampoo, but I put on mascara for the first time in weeks, and what passes for evening wear in our tax bracket, over which you were expertly strapped. The event was hosted by the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and the money was to build a crisis shelter for disabled queer kids. The sisters greeted all of the guests at the door. They were shameless and wonderful, and I let a stranger hold you for the very first time. She had a mohawk made of jet black feathers and a baby blue vinyl corset. Her name was Sister Dixie Rubs, and she wanted to hold you, and I let her. And it was fine. She didn't steal you, and I didn't die. We took your picture together. You were in awe of her. I don't think you'd ever seen glitter. I found a place high up in the corner. I worried that you would start crying and the performers would be mad at us. They would practice for weeks and weeks and would later tell their friends how when their big moment came, nobody could hear them over the screaming baby and her narcissistic heteronormative mom who should be at home in a rocking chair not sabotaging the cause with a tiny noisemaker. But the hall filled all the way up, and soon we gathered a crowd of 20-something gay boys who declared as a group that they loved you madly, that your fingers were perfect and your eyes were so wise. How can you stand it? One asked. She's looking right into my soul. Tell me about it. And you didn't cry. The show was kind of a blur. The acts themselves alternated between professional drag performers and clients, lip-syncing to Lady Gaga or just moving in a way that was never dancing until that moment, and then it was more than dancing ever was. And with a great sense of relief, I realized that maybe I was a narcissist. Here were these kids that had been thrown to the wolves for the double sin of being both imperfect and loving the wrong way, who were vulnerable, but who would be who they were born to be, even if it cost them everything. And it had. And here were these complete divas who were, on the surface, the essence of hedonism, who would make sure that these kids were taken care of, who were giving them back the family that they had lost, and I felt like an asshole forever worrying about us. The last performer was a 17-year-old drag queen with Down syndrome in a silky red cocktail dress and a wild brunette pharaoh wig. the stage lights came up and the music came on, and I'm telling you, I'm not leaving. You're the best thing I ever had. I don't want to be free. And you're gonna love me. She was lip syncing, but her mouth twisted up around each word like she was screaming to everyone ever. It was a battle cry. And everyone was singing and crying, and your little feet were kicking, and maybe you were dancing for the first time. I don't know. We learned to be mothers from all kinds of people, but one of them was a 17-year-old drag queen with Down syndrome. Sometimes the world is a terrible place, and you can be sad about it. Or you can look it in the eye with a song clenched between your teeth and a fistful of glitter, and so help me God, I want you to grow up to do just like that. I'm going to try not to worry. Everything's probably going to be okay. Thank you.